While my husband was at work, his brother did this to me. True story. I never imagined that a simple afternoon at home would change my life forever. The moment my husband left for work, I felt a sense of normalcy until his brother arrived unannounced. His presence unsettled me, but I brushed it off. Then something happened, something so shocking that even now I struggle to believe it. The air in the house grew heavy, my heart pounded, and every instinct told me to run, but I froze. If only I had known what he was capable of. But that was just the beginning. My name is Emily, and for the past 5 years I have been married to Daniel. He is a hardworking man dedicated to providing for us, often leaving early in the morning and returning late at night. Our life together was simple, predictable, and for the most part happy. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood, nothing extraordinary, but it was ours. Daniel worked long hours in construction while I stayed home managing the household. It was a routine. I'd grown used to a rhythm that felt safe until that day. Daniel's younger brother Ryan had always been around. He was the complete opposite of Daniel, impulsive, unpredictable, and always looking for trouble. While Daniel had a steady job and a responsible nature, Ryan drifted from one thing to another, never holding on to a job or a commitment for long. I tolerated him because he was family, but I never felt entirely comfortable around him. Ryan had a way of making his presence known, whether through his loud voice, his offhand comments, or the way he always seemed to be watching me a little too closely. Daniel never noticed, or if he did, he brushed it off as harmless. "That's just Ryan," he would say, shaking his head with a laugh. But there were moments when I felt something in Ryan's gaze that made my skin crawl. Still, I never mentioned it. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was overreacting. Then one afternoon, everything changed. Daniel left early that morning, just like any other day. He kissed me on the forehead, grabbed his lunch, and walked out the door, promising to be back late. The house felt quiet after he left, and I went about my usual routine, cleaning up the kitchen, folding laundry, listening to the distant hum of passing cars outside. A few hours later, the doorbell rang. I was not expecting anyone. My stomach tightened as I wiped my hands on a dish towel and walked to the front door. Peering through the peephole, I saw Ryan standing there, his hands in his pockets, rocking back on his heels. I hesitated. It was not unusual for Ryan to stop by unannounced, but something about the way he stood there, so still, so patient, made my chest tighten. I forced a small smile as I opened the door. "Ryan," I said, stepping aside. "What are you doing here?" He shrugged, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Just in the neighborhood," he said, his voice casual. "Thought I'd stop by and check on you." I closed the door behind him, forcing myself to relax. He had been in our home many times before. There was no reason to feel uneasy, or so I thought. As I walked toward the kitchen, I could feel his eyes on me. The air in the room seemed heavier, the silence stretching too long between us. Something was different. Then he spoke. "You are always alone in this house. Doesn't that ever bother you?" His words sent a chill down my spine. I turned to face him, searching his expression for some kind of joke, but his eyes held something else entirely, something I could not quite place, and in that moment I knew something was wrong. The room suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing, and I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter, willing myself to stay calm. Ryan leaned against the doorway, his arms crossed, eyes scanning the space around him before settling back on me. "You don't mind the quiet?" he asked again, his voice low, almost testing me. I forced a smile. "I like it," I said, keeping my tone light. "Gives me time to get things done." He smirked, stepping further into the room. "You know, you are always so put together," he said, dragging a chair out and sitting down. "It must get boring just waiting here every day for Daniel to come home." Something in his tone sent another ripple of unease through me. I turned to the sink, pretending to rinse a plate, trying to buy time to figure out why his words felt so off. Ryan had always been inappropriate, throwing out teasing remarks, standing too close, but this was different. This was deliberate. "Daniel works hard," I said, keeping my back to him, "and I have plenty to do." Silence, then the scrape of his chair against the tile floor. My pulse quickened. "Do you ever wonder what it would be like if things were different?" he asked. I turned slowly, my stomach tightening. "What do you mean?" Ryan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time I saw it clearly, the thing that had always made me uneasy. It was not just casual interest, it was something darker. He smiled, but it was not warm. "If you had married someone else," he said, his voice quiet, calculated. "If you had ended up with me." A cold wave of panic rolled through me. I laughed, but the sound was thin, forced. "Ryan, stop," I said, trying to keep things light. "That's not funny." His expression did not change. "Who said I was joking?" My throat went dry. I took a step back, my hip bumping against the counter. The space between us suddenly felt too small. "I think you should go," I said firmly. Ryan didn't move. He studied me, his head tilting slightly. "Why are you acting like this?" he asked, his Voice almost amused. I'm just talking. No, I said, my voice shaking. You are not. His smile faded, replaced with something more serious. He stood up, taking a slow step toward me. I reached behind me, gripping the edge of the counter, my fingers brushing against a knife resting in the dish rack. Ryan noticed. His eyes flickered to my hand, then back to my face. For a second, I thought he might say something else, push things further, but then he exhaled sharply and took a step back. Relax, he said, holding up his hands in mock surrender. I was just messing with you. I didn't respond. I just stared at him, heart hammering in my chest. Then, as if nothing had happened, he grabbed his keys from his pocket and walked toward the door. I will see around, he said over his shoulder. Before stepping outside, the door clicked shut. I stood frozen, my breath coming in shallow gasps. The house felt different now, tainted. I locked the door behind him, twisting the deadbolt, my hands trembling. I wanted to believe that was the end of it, that he was just trying to get under my skin, that I was overreacting, but deep down I knew better, because the look in his eyes had told me something. This was not over. That night I barely slept. My mind replayed every second of my encounter with Ryan. The way he stood too close, the way his voice lowered when he spoke, the unsettling smirk on his face. It was not just a joke, it was something else. Daniel came home late, exhausted. As usual, he kissed my forehead, mumbled something about work, and collapsed onto the couch. I wanted to tell him. Every instinct screamed at me to say something, but what would I even say? Ryan had not done anything, not really, and what if Daniel dismissed it just like before? So I said nothing, but silence did not make it go away. The next morning, I woke up to an eerie stillness. Daniel had already left for work. I told myself I would be fine. I would lock the doors, stay busy, and push away the unease creeping into my bones. Then the doorbell rang. My stomach twisted into knots. I did not have to look. I knew who it was. Ryan. My hands shook as I clutched my phone. Should I pretend I was not home? Should I call Daniel? Another ring, then a knock. I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to stay steady. Ryan, go home. Silence. Then his voice, calm, almost amused. Come on, Emily, open the door. I swallowed hard. No. A long pause. Then the doorknob rattled. Panic surged through me. I had locked the door last night. I knew I had, but the sound of metal clicking sent my pulse into a frenzy. I rushed forward, pressing my weight against the door as if that alone would keep him out. Ryan, stop, I shouted. He laughed. Relax, I just want to talk. The doorknob twisted again, harder this time. A sickening realization hit me. He had a key. I stumbled backward just as the lock clicked open. The door creaked and Ryan stepped inside, shutting it behind him. Everything inside me screamed to run, but my feet would not move. He stood there watching me, calm, smiling. You look scared, he said. My heart pounded against my ribs. You need to leave, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He took a slow step forward. Why? Daniel is not here. It is just us. I gripped my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. I should call someone. I should do something. He moved closer. I know you feel it too, he said softly. The way things could be different. My stomach lurched. Stop, I said. This is insane. He reached for me. I bolted. I sprinted toward the kitchen, my heart hammering. I yanked open a drawer, my fingers closing around the first thing I could find, a knife. Ryan, stop. Ed, his expression shifting. For the first time I saw something flicker across his face. Surprise. You are overreacting, he said, raising his hands. I gripped the knife tighter, breathing hard. Get out. A tense silence stretched between us. His gaze darkened, but after a moment he stepped back. Fine, he muttered. You want to play this game? Go ahead. He turned and walked out, slamming the door behind him. I stood there gripping the knife, my entire body shaking. It was not over. I knew it was not over, and for the first time I was truly afraid of what would happen next. The moment the door slammed shut, my knees buckled. I caught myself against the counter, my breath coming in shallow gasps. The knife in my hand felt heavy, but I refused to let go. My entire body trembled with the lingering adrenaline, my mind racing through what had just happened. Ryan had a key. That thought alone made my skin crawl. How long had he had it? Did Daniel give it to him, or had he taken it? I forced myself to move. I ran to the door, twist in the lock, double-checking, triple-checking. Then I grabbed a chair and wedged it under the handle. My hands were still shaking, but I had to be sure. The silence in the house felt unbearable. My ears strained, expecting to hear Ryan come back, to hear footsteps outside the door handle rattling again, but there was nothing. I needed to do something. I needed to tell Daniel. With trembling fingers, I called him. The phone rang once, twice, then voicemail. I exhaled, sharply gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles ached. Should I leave a message? Should I wait? Number. I could not wait. I typed out a message. Instead, my hands hovered over the screen as I hesitated. How could I even explain what had just happened? Would Daniel believe me? Ryan has a key. He just came inside. I stared at the words for a long moment before hitting send. My heart pounded as I watched the screen, waiting for those 3 little dots to appear, but nothing. I swallowed down my frustration. Maybe he was busy. Maybe he had not seen it yet. But I could not sit here and do nothing. I needed to make sure Ryan could not come back. I moved through the house, checking every window, every lock. My paranoia grew with each passing second. Had he been inside? Before, had he been watching me without me knowing? The thought sent a fresh wave of panic through me. Then another realization hit me. If Ryan had a key, what stopped him from coming back whenever he wanted? My stomach twisted. I had to get out of here. I grabbed my purse, my keys, my phone. I was halfway to the front door when my phone vibrated. Daniel, what are you talking about? A flood of relief hit me. I typed back quickly, me. Ryan has a key to our house. He just let himself in. He would not leave until I pulled a knife on him. The three dots appeared instantly, then disappeared, then reappeared. My pulse thundered. Daniel, are you serious? Me, why would I lie about this? Another long pause. Then, Daniel, I never gave him a key. The words sent ice through my veins. I sat down hard on the couch, my head spinning. If Daniel never gave him a key, that meant Ryan had taken one or copied it. The walls of my home, once safe and familiar, now felt like a trap. My phone vibrated again. Daniel, I am coming home. Do not open the door for anyone. I let out a shaky breath. I should have felt safer knowing Daniel was on his way, but I didn't, because deep down I knew Ryan was not finished, and I had no idea what he would do next. I sat on the couch gripping my phone, waiting for Daniel to walk through that door. Every passing second felt stretched. The silence in the house suffocating. My mind raced with questions, ones I did not have answers to. How long had Ryan been planning this? Had he watched me in my own home, knowing he could come in any time he wanted? Had I ignored the warning signs for too long? When Daniel finally arrived, I could see the worry in his eyes. The moment he stepped inside, he locked the door behind him, double-checking it the way I had done just moments ago. He did not even take off his work boots. Instead, he pulled me into his arms, holding me tight. He is never coming back here, Daniel murmured against my hair. I swear to you, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to feel safe again, but the fear still clung to me. That night, we changed the locks, every single one. Daniel texted Ryan telling him he was no longer welcome in our home. There was no argument, no dramatic confrontation, just a single warning. But deep down I knew it was not over, because people like Ryan, they do not just walk away. Days passed, then weeks. I went about my life pretending things were normal, but the paranoia never left. Every shadow outside the window, every unexpected noise made my heart race. I found myself checking the locks over and over, even in broad daylight, and sometimes, I swear, I could feel someone watching me. Maybe it was just my imagination. Maybe Ryan had truly gotten the message and moved on, or maybe he was just waiting for the right moment. The thought still haunts me. What would you do if someone you trusted revealed who they really were? If the person you thought was family became the person you feared the most? And more importantly, what if one day they came back? Like, comment, and subscribe for more real-life stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. The sunlight had passed, and faint rays filtered through the blinds, yet the room felt unnervingly still. My body ached, and I could still sense the chilling touch of shadows on my skin. For a moment, I questioned whether it had all been a nightmare, a cruel manifestation of my grief. However, upon turning my head toward the closet, I noticed the door was wide open, and Ryan's jacket was draped over the chair by my desk. I scrambled to my feet, my hands trembling as I reached for the jacket. It carried his scent, that subtle blend of pine and earth he always possessed. Tears welled in my eyes as I clutched it to my chest. I muttered Ryan, hoping he could somehow perceive me. What actions should I take now? I devoted the remainder of the day to comprehending the events involving the shadows. His voice evoked a sensation of being drawn into darkness. It was too vivid to be dismissed as a mere dream. His words, "They want you now," reverberated in my thoughts, instilling a burgeoning sense of dread. Who were they, and why me? I eschewed the closet, declining to even cast a peek in its direction. The house felt oppressive, as if an invisible presence resided in every corner. My parents, however, remained oblivious to any anomalies, while I struggled to meet their gaze. I yearned to disclose my experiences, yet how could I articulate something I did not comprehend? They already believed I was grappling with grief, and this revelation would merely validate their concerns regarding my mental stability. That night, sleep eluded me. Every creak of the floorboards and every gust of wind against the window sent my heart racing. I held Ryan's jacket alongside me, grasping it tightly. Essential support. At almost midnight, I heard once more the subtle knock at the window. My stomach churned as I sat up, grasping the dark blanket about me. This time, I did not hesitate. I compelled myself out of bed and approached the window, tearing the curtain back. There was nothing present but the reflection of my own pallid face and the vacant yard. As I turned away, a cool breeze swept by, sending a shudder down my spine. The closet door, which I had securely closed earlier, was now ajar. My heart dropped as I gazed at it, dread accumulating in my gut. "Ryan," I shouted out softly, my voice barely audible. The air in the room moved, and for a second, I believed I heard him again, a faint murmur so subdued that I could not discern the words. I approached the closet with trepidation, each step feeling potentially final. Upon reaching it, I hesitated, my palm poised above the door. I yearned to flee and seal it shut indefinitely, yet I understood that I could not, if I sought answers. I opened the door and found his filthy, worn hiking boots neatly placed in the corner. I was certain they had not been there previously. A letter was concealed within one of them. Inscribed in Ryan's distinctive handwriting, my palm trembled as I unfolded the paper, the words sending a chill down my spine. "It's not over. Be ready." I dropped the note, my mind racing. What did he mean by "be ready"? The shadows? The voices? I was uncertain about where to seek guidance or how to ready myself for an incomprehensible situation. All I knew was that this was not the conclusion. Whatever had seized Ryan was also pursuing me, and my time was limited. Even now, as I sit in the security of daylight, the occurrences of that night continue to torment me, and I cannot dispel the recollection. The mournful tone of Ryan's voice, the imploring expression in his eyes, and the enigmatic caution he imparted render the shadows in my room no longer just illusions of light. Every creak of the floorboards and every flicker of the lamp instills in me a profound dread. The house, once my sanctuary, has transformed into an unrecognizable space where the boundary between this world and the unknown appears perilously tenuous. I have endeavored to persuade myself that it is merely a figment of my imagination, a manifestation of grief and insomnia. However, the jacket, the boots, and the note are tangible realities, occupying a corner of my room. Reminders of an undeniable truth persist. Ryan remains somewhere ensnared in a darkness I cannot comprehend. For inexplicable reasons, that darkness now approaches me as well. I ponder whether I should have confided in someone, my parents, a friend, anyone who might lend credence to my claims. However, how does one articulate something so implausible, something that resembles a nightmare more than reality? I have dedicated countless hours to research, scouring old texts and forums in search of explanations for my experiences. The more I investigate, the more questions arise. Who are they, and what do they desire? Is Ryan genuinely absent, or is he ensnared between two realms, and why am I involved? I continually contemplate the ravine where he perished, reflecting on his characterization of it as a sanctuary. What if it was not? What if an unforeseen entity awaited him there that night, something he failed to perceive until it was too late? Furthermore, what if that same force lies in wait for me as I compose this? I sense the oppressive weight of the unknown bearing down upon me. I am uncertain of what lies ahead, yet I can feel its presence, as if the shadows are sentient, observing and anticipating. Ryan advised preparedness. However, how can one really prepare for an unseen, incomprehensible adversary? Perhaps I am mistaken. Perhaps this turmoil will subside, and the world will revert to its previous state. However, a part of me is cognizant that this is not concluded, not for me, and perhaps not for you either. What would you do if a loved one called out to you from the abyss? Would you flee, or would you endeavor to rescue them regardless of the consequences? Please share your thoughts in the comments, as I must admit I am uncertain about my next steps. If you wish to follow the progression of this narrative, kindly like, comment, and subscribe. This is not the conclusion. Nonetheless, I will leave you with this. Occasionally, those we have lost are not as distant as we perceive. The pertinent question is whether you are prepared for their return.